Hi, this is Saran Fox.
And I'm Dan Watanabe.
And this is Dan and Saran Take on Hollywood.
Today our guests are Garen Tanilian, Ty Justice, and David Novello. And we are talking about...
fathers in the movies. And on TV.
And on TV. So, Saran, you start. Tell me, who is your favorite father figure in movies and television?
Okay, I'm going to have to say that there are a number of them, but the one that occurred to me when we decided to do this was Spencer Tracy as Manuel in Captains Courageous. He is not the actual father of Freddie Bartholomew, who's the rich, spoiled kid who winds up on this fishing boat. He's got a father who's loving but neglectful, and he becomes he learns what it is to be a man through his relationship with Spencer Tracy, who plays Manuel, the Portuguese fisherman. And there is a definite father-son relationship, and in the end, he loses this father figure, but reestablishes a strong relationship with his own father. And so I would have to say that it is my favorite father figure in movies. What about you, Dan?
My favorite father figure is Melvin Douglas in the movie HUD.
Yes.
And the reason that I love the Melvin Douglas character is because here you have someone who preaches to the world that he's highly moral and he's got all of these values, and he's a representation of the Old West. And yet he has Paul Newman as this wastrel son. And what I love about it is that you see you see the truth about that relationship. That there's a scene when he goes, how could a man like you be a son of a man like me? And Paul Newman turns to him and said, you had those same feelings below your belt as any other man, so stop it. And it was real, because I think for a lot of guys, the relationship with their father is every bit as complicated as a lot of daughters are with their fathers. But it's different. It's a totally different kind of dynamic. So, David, you as a father now,
Yes.
what do you feel when you see depictions of fatherhood on television or movies today?
Today, I actually haven't recently seen any great father roles today. I would like to say that for me, the greatest father role was in Poltergeist. Coach. I can't remember his name
Craig T.
right
Nelson.
now.
Craig T. Nelson.
Yes, Craig T. Nelson. And
I don't know where that came from.
his devotion to his family and how strong he was, and the I would say the pillar of his family, you know, and definitely I see myself as a Craig T. Nelson, you know, but The Walking Dead is another thing too, being the father of in a situation that is a world of zombies. How do you train your son to, you know, take on the world? Now, I don't agree with some of the methods in Walking Dead, but if in that situation, I think I would probably strengthen them to survive just the same.
You do what's necessary. How about you, Ty?
Interesting. Just for reference, I was only child, single mom. So father figures, positive male role models were different for me. The two that stick out in my mind in film, the one particularly would be Christopher Reeve in Superman. I always looked up to that character and that portrayal of truth, justice in the American way, and just being a very loving, caring, sensitive individual as what I looked for, what I tried to emulate as a man, as a boy and as a man. And when I ever have sunglasses on and I fix my sunglasses, or I always do it like Clark Kent would. So I always emulated Christopher Reeve's performance. And in terms of just of love in general, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Gene Wilder's character, it's very odd, but those two kind of shaped my childhood in terms of what a man should be and what a man is, and that whole mentality of the role. But when it comes to, funny what you were saying about TV dads always come off to me as very stupid and passive a lot of times. And I've seen like fathers like yourself, I know David, getting to know him more and more, and you know, I look at real life and it's just absurd. I'm like, you know, David would never fall for any of that stuff or anything like that. I look at people that are around my age and how they treat and act with their children, and it's very different. And I have nothing but respect for people that have have not only a child but more than one. And he looks like and seems to be and is a great father.
Speaking of TV fathers, on Modern Family, it's very interesting. Ed O'Neill is this grumpy old school guy who
Phil.
loves his children, and then you've got Ty Burrell, who's like a grown-up kid. He's a good father, but his wife is more of a father than he is in the traditional way.
Yeah.
And then you have the two gay dads, who are the most devoted fathers. In fact, they're a little overprotective and over-involved, but they're super focused on their adopted child. So that's kind of interesting. And other TV dads, I wrote down three series: Sopranos, where it was a father who didn't quite understand his children and had his prejudices and his own troubles. And then you had Mad Men, Don Draper, one of the worst fathers, except in certain moments when he connected with his daughter. But he was a neglectful husband, a neglectful father. And Breaking Bad, where Walter White starts off as a devoted husband and father, and in a Shakespearean way descends into hell.
Mm-hmm.
And realizes at the very end of the series, when he says to his wife, "I loved it." He loved it more than his family, more than being a husband and a father. He loved what he did. Garen, why don't you tell us about your favorite TV or movie?
Well, I have a lot that I grew up with that I kind of like stuck in my mind because I grew up. My parents divorced when I was 8, and so like I kind of had that. I grew up with I know my dad, and like we have a relationship. But it was one of those things where like growing up, still living with my mom was kind of weird to adjust, and television helped me adjust that. My favorite, I would say, father figure in television that I grew up with was Philip Banks from Fresh Prince. And I was because I love Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and still I'll always remember the first of any like show that ever made me like feel emotion was the episode where Will's father came back and left.
Ben Vereen, right?
Yeah, and there was that episode, and they had that moment together where Uncle Phil was more of a father than his own father. And so it was a really like that hit me hard, and I could like because it was the first time that I ever seen some kind of relationship like that. Not that it related to me in that sense, but because I saw something that was like really real about what it meant to be a father figure.
They say there's a difference between a sperm donor and a real father.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be blood. It's the person who got up in the middle of the night when you were sick and taught you how to ride a bike, and DNA really doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's right.
In the end, it really doesn't matter who's doing the job.
I was told that Phil Duffy was the father I would probably eventually become, and I'm okay with that.
That's well, the way you are with your dogs, I think.
That's
you being a very good father.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
I hope so.
And then, of course, there's Liam Neeson in Taken,
Oh.
who is the ultimate great father.
Oh my God, yes.
I mean,
Who doesn't? I want to go get lost, so someone like Liam Neeson can come find me and show his special
What is that line
skills.
he says to them? "I will find you."
I will kill you.
Find you, I will kill you.
Yes, and
That movie, the first time I remember seeing it with some friends, and it was like we sat down and we didn't see it in theaters. We saw it on DVD. We went to my dad's and we saw it, and we were just like, oh my, what the, and just like it was nuts because the whole movie he was just like after that moment of I will find you, he went from being protective father to mass murderer just for his daughter, and it was like, and my dad was watching, like we're all watching like. Whoa! And my dad was watching like, that makes sense. I do that.
Sure. I have to tell you a little story. My husband was in his 40s when we had our first child, so he always said his 2 sons were a gift to him in his middle age. And after we had our oldest, he was talking to somebody when the baby was maybe a month old, and he said, well, here's my philosophy. He says, if you come near my kid, I'll have to kill you, and no jury would convict me. And that was his mantra about the kids, about our sons, that I guess when you are a parent, mother and father, what happens is it gets very primal and it gets very gender specific. The mother is the giver of life, feeds the baby, protects, nurturing, and there's the father with his arms around both of them saying, don't come near, don't come near. It's really interesting when you do have a child, what happens, and I know David can relate to that. Everything changes.
Everything changes.
Everything.
The entire world.
Yeah. I haven't experienced that the same way with actual children. My children all have 4 legs. So far, that's the level I'm at. I love them dearly, but just as from my mom, the funny thing is my dad my father spent time in San Quentin, and he had a pretty shady past. Was a pretty tough hombre. My mother is the only person he ever really feared. Yeah, and my mom is a sweetheart. Dan's met my mom. I love my mom. She's a sweetheart. But I'm telling you, when it came to me, even now, she like, if I'm having if I've had a bad day, she finds out, she goes, "Where do they live?" She'll be like that kind of mom. She's very
Absolutely.
dedicated.
I want to ask Dan a question because we're going to go back in time a little bit to
Yeah.
Cat in the Hot Tin Roof and Burl Ives as Big Daddy. I'd have to hear you talk a little bit about Big Daddy because he was a daddy and a granddaddy and a...
That's your nickname, isn't
well,
it, Dan? No.
yeah. I can kind of be a big daddy figure because all of us big guys eventually become that, even if we don't want to. What I loved about Burl Ives and that, and Orson Welles in The Long Hot Summer, and any time you see these big patriarchal figures, is that most of them, you realize, became these tyrants because they wanted to protect things for their kids. It's not out of just bullying. And that leads me to my favorite TV dad, who is a little controversial. And that is that I loved Archie Bunker. And the
Archie
reason,
Bunker was my favorite.
and the reason I loved Archie Bunker is growing up in 1970, when the show started, I'm 7 and 8 years old. So I'm used to seeing the world through the prism of us being Asians and not fitting in with our neighborhood. Not that I ever had any prejudice against it, because I didn't. I was very lucky in that. But I would watch that show because, I grew up in a more or less a middle class neighborhood. So when I watched the Brady Bunch, I'm like, oh, they're rich people. We can't relate to that.
Right.
But I could relate to Archie Bunker, even though his house was really messy. Because if our house looked that way, my mom would kill me. She would say, you shamed the family. So what if someone come over and they see and they see your thing all over floor? No good. But when I was watching All in the Family, and you saw him being bigoted, you saw him being somewhat nasty to his son, but
His son-in-law.
as
In-law.
son-in-law,
Yeah.
son-in-law. But as I'm watching it, I'm also seeing that, like my dad, he is providing for everyone. And not only is he providing for everyone, but when he gets down to who he is, and he gives this explanation why he has the beliefs he has, and he says to Mike, why would somebody, because I learned all this from my father, and my father loved me, and he would break his hand on me because he wanted me to be a good boy. And why would someone who loved me like that tell me something that was wrong? And it was a moment of huge insight. And as the show went on, you see that Mike, who criticizes Archie but never offers to help, that the show, in spite of what I think Norman Lear might believe in his private life, flipped.
Yeah.
And you started understanding Archie, because when Mike has his opportunity to be a father, what did he do? He went away, abandoned his wife, and joined a commune. And as I was growing up, I was seeing more and more of my schoolmates where that exact thing was happening. You either had the mothers reading that book, I can't even remember the title of it now, but it was written by a woman who just woke up one
Feminine Mystique,
morning.
Betty Friedan.
No, it wasn't that. It was far more popular. It was about a woman who decided one morning that she was sick and tired of her family, so she just walks away and lives this life of wild hedonism and how happy she is now. And then we had other examples in my own neighborhood of fathers running away and getting married to someone else, or even in my own school having one of the teachers run off with one of the other teachers, and it was a scandal. And I was like, oh my God, even though my dad is typical Asian, i.e. completely emotionally distant, completely secretive and all of that, I'm really happy he's still there.
Well, it's like that very physical thing that Archie Bunker did episode after episode. He came home from work every single night, took that jacket off, hung it up in the closet, and then faced all the family chaos. But he came home every night. He didn't run around. He didn't drink too much. And even though he put his wife down, every night they went to bed together. And they even had, I always like the episode where they addressed their physical relationship, where there was a sense that they had a sex life, that he did need and love her. But he also, as a father,